Hey everyone, you're coming live from our cheese board in Napa in a beautiful winery on a gorgeous summer day. Context, we're all together. We just finished a year of school, a little more than a year for some of us. Now we're relaxing, drinking wine, eating meats and cheeses and fruit, the way that life should be lived. We also have a lot of thoughts about the way that we table thoughts and ideas, the way that our brains are smoothing over. That is a foreshadowing of upcoming topics. We're having a grand old time, so don't worry about us. But we thought it'd be great if we could record today because we're having such good conversation, and we were like, we should just record this.
And also, this is the first time we're making an episode with all of us in the same place.
Yeah. No, we did. Well, okay, that's true.
Yeah. No, that doesn't count. That's been wiped from my memory.
For our new listeners and our old throwback to when we tried to record together when we were in Michigan, and we were like, this is a great idea. We had an audience, and it was not our best work, to say the least. So, without further ado, here's thoughts from California.
Whoa.
Okay, so what we were talking about before was they're trying to cut cheese right now. It's not going well.
Yeah, sorry if there's any extra noises or chewing.
Some munches going on, some pauses. Well, okay, the starter question was when someone says, okay, your test exam score has been posted, do you look at it immediately or do you wait? I personally look at it immediately because it's just going to bug me forever. And if I don't see it, then, it's just a waste. And I'm fine with whatever outcome happens, so I just look at it right away. Kat, on the other hand, if you would like to explain that. She's also mid-chew, so...
I know I'm more editing, so we can chew for as long as you want.
So I wait, because I need to be in a secure environment, so I can react however I want. I don't know if I should elaborate.
Is that because you can't control how you react?
No, I think it's just I want to give myself the space to react however I want.
That's fair.
Yeah. I don't want to feel bad about it or feel like I need to be maintaining a certain facade for the benefit of other people. I just want to be able to be okay, this is my score, this is the result, whatever. And then I can react and process it however I want. And then, then that's it. Then I'm whatever. It's not because it's a huge deal because, test scores or whatever. But I think that's just how I prefer to react to it.
Yeah. I check it immediately and I just bottle up my reaction because I'm usually around people. I'm like, all right. But also I think I do that because part of me wants to prove to myself that my grades don't define me. And then so I'm like, okay, it doesn't matter. And so I'm just gonna check it whenever I want because it's just it's just checking my phone,
Yeah, I get that. I also feel like it's either really good and then I can feel great. If I'm just at home, I'm gonna check it no matter what. But especially when I'm out, it's okay, if I do good, I don't have to worry about it and I can enjoy the rest of my day. And if I do bad, I'm still around people and friends where I can just be okay, well, that's not all there is to life. I'm gonna enjoy this moment that I'm in right now. And it's really easy for me to dissociate from whatever happened. It's almost I see the bad exam score and I also see what's in front of me and I'm the world has not ended, so it's fine. Kind of thing. And I'm sure there's repercussions later, my exam score or my overall total drops, but luckily I don't think it's happened yet. And I think I trust that I've studied enough to at least pass. So it's not too much of a deal for me. It's just how much damage has been done. But I can usually tell after an exam anyways. It's just to confirm or deny how I've done.
All right, bread break. It's gonna be a little bit loud.
Literally.
And also refilling the crackers.
Can we get some of those non ones? Yeah. Add this to the final cut. Okay. People need to get the vibe.
I feel okay, that's interesting because I find it easier to dissociate from things that haven't happened yet than to dissociate from things that have happened.
Okay. So, great. Great segue. So this question was kind of like an attachment to a bigger discussion that we've had earlier. So Kat and I we're all going through not so much like life changes, but I think we're definitely in a different stage of life than we were before. Where I think like now that I have my next 3 years planned, my brain automatically started focusing on different things, like as far as like long-term things, you know, like romantic partners or who I'm gonna live with like in the next couple years, just like things that are outside of my career more so. And I like could not stop ruminating about it. And I think that's my default when I'm not thinking about school or like work or other things like that. Like my brain is just like, okay, what's the next problem that needs to be solved that I have to address? Whereas Kat, on the other hand, if you would like to explain it.
No thoughts.
No, quite literally. Like, I'm like, how do you not think about these things that are going to affect you? And I think that also translates into the way that we open our test exam scores or like approach other problems. How do you feel about this, Jamothy?
So I felt like, okay, so more context is that this is day one for me and Kat. So we both flew into California last night. Or no, I flew in last night. Kat has been here since noon of yesterday. Yeah. So Kat and Loho have had time to mull over these questions. And then when they picked me up from the airport, the first thing that Loho said was like, my brain's smoothing over. I think I'm going through menopause. I'm like, oh my gosh, what is happening?
Okay, more context. Okay, yesterday was a long day for me. Also, we had been driving, so I had league, and then Jam's like flight got delayed, and then Kat and I were driving around for 3 hours. We listened to BTS. I don't usually listen to BTS. My emotion, like I was tired and like physically exhausted. My brain was a little overwhelmed. Kat opened my mind to like a lot of different topics before even league happened. So at this point, it felt like I had been in the wilderness for 2 weeks without water and food. And
Definitely had to use the bathroom.
We also had to pee horribly, and then there was like a delay on this is not important to you listeners, but I just need to like there was a road blocked off in traffic. I had to cut a car off. Like he honked at me, but he was the one that was in the wrong. Like he was just waiting there, so I had to go. Anyways, so I'm a little distressed. And Jam is always my source of comfort, and I apologize for that deeply. But when you're there in person, I'm just gonna be honest with you. I'm not gonna be like, oh my gosh, Jam, like I've missed you. Like you already know that. I'm going through an existential life crisis.
Yeah, honestly, I don't think you had the words to explain.
No, because also, okay, at the airport, no one was moving. But they weren't, like, their person that they were trying to pick up was not there. And Jam was right there, and I was at the end of the line, and I was like, everyone needs to move so I can pick up my person and leave. And so then they made it super complicated, and I was like, Jam, okay, you see the cars, like, 5 rows down? Get in the car, we're going. Like, I didn't even say hi to Jam. I was just like, okay, we gotta leave this place. Like, I also remember, again, had to pee so badly. I had drinking so much water, and I'd stopped drinking water, so I was also dehydrated.
I was still drinking water.
So we were just, like, all parts were just not good.
Yeah. And then I got in the car, I was like, I don't know what's going on. And then Kat was like, okay, check the travel deck that we have going on. And there's just like a million topics that we had to discuss, so.
Yeah. We're discussing it now on the podcast.
Yeah.
So anyways, the scene is set. That's why I had to start the podcast gently by saying we're in Napa drinking and eating delicious charcuterie. Because now things are fine. Kind of. So also, like, hi to our new listeners. I know Jam really, like, blasted us on, like, so many different, like, to so many different random
Okay,
people.
it was not on purpose, I swear to God.
You wouldn't tell anybody about things that you didn't want
Okay,
to know.
I literally... Context is that, okay, so I'm playing Frisbee this summer, and I told one person that I had a podcast, and then the entire team somehow found out about it, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And then now it is a part of my identity. So
I just want to say, if you guys go to nationals and make it far, like, you're welcome, because I feel like this is a very bonding, like, medium. Okay.
anyways, so checking test scores and how that relates to thinking about relationships, which I feel like I still don't really understand the connection.
Well, I think where this all came from was, like, I am, like I said, no thoughts, right? I feel like I have no thoughts on relationships or the near future because I'm moving, and, like, just, like, the thought of it is overwhelming. Should we give context for the brain folding thing? Because I think...
Oh, yeah.
Let's start that.
Okay. Yeah. So we were talking about how, like, people, as they age, you, like, become more inflexible and you're, like, very conservative in your thinking. And, like, part of that is biological. You're set in your way of life. And especially if you have, like, a really strict routine, you're, like, this is just how I live my life. And your brain, like, it's constantly trimming away information that it thinks it doesn't need to, like, make space for new information. And so the older you get, and also just, like, once your brain stops developing at age 25, which we're all approaching, it kind of is like, if you're not constantly making this decision to give your brain new information, it just starts to, like, trim away your ability to, like, receive ideas that are different from who you are and whatnot. And so we were talking about how we feel like our brains are smoothing over, like, losing their folds or, like, becoming more inflexible as they're finishing development. And then I think where I, like, came in with the relationships thing is, like, I was like, I'm not sure if my lack of thoughts about the upcoming future is because my brain is smoothing over and I'm losing my folds, or if it's because, like, I'm holding back, like, a wave of thoughts and I'm just, like, repressing everything to try to, like, cope with big changes and, like, the unknown and stuff.
And also, fun fact, this was kind of a simulation moment when you told me this in the car from the airport, because I was like, I literally just learned about this in school, where babies are better at recognizing different faces than adults, because as we grow up, we lose the ability to distinguish different faces, because it's just like a skill our brains decided that it doesn't really need. So I was like, wow, we've been losing folds since we were born.
Yeah, and it's only downhill after your birth. But I think the opposite of Kat, where I was like, oh, is my brain smoothing over? Like, this was before we even talked. I was just like, I don't think about as many concepts or ideas or things as I used to. Like, I think, one, it's acceptance. Two, it's learning more about things and, like, being more confident about how I engage with the world. But I was like, is my brain smoothing over? Because all I can think about now is, like, relationships, friendships, family, like, whatever's in front of me or, like, what I'm trying to anticipate. And I, like, don't think about other concepts or things that I used to think about. And that kind of scared me because I was like, is my brain smoothing over? But also, I think we should put also into context that we're all, like, kind of we were in hard graduate programs this past year. And so I was also thinking, like, maybe my default is to think about something that's not really, like, super important or pertinent right now, and, like, that's more fun to think about, which might be, like, relationships or friendships or drama kind of thing. And that's why I'm thinking about this. But I also think it is more related to what Kat was saying about, like, it being biological and that there are brain changes going on as we develop and age. But I also horrifyingly think that it's also, you know, the instinct to want to have, like, a family and, like, the social influence of, like, having a nuclear family and that being, like, the idealized life to live. So that's the brain smoothing over. So whenever we, like, refer to it, just know that that means that we're getting old and jaded and that we have, like, no new thoughts. And I don't necessarily think that's true. And I think we're all in professions where we constantly have to keep learning, which is, you know, why I personally, like, pursued this path in the first place. So yeah. Anyways.
So why do we think about relationships, if that's the route we want to take?
So I think about it because that's, like, the next big thing that I feel the need to pursue. Like, having a partner, having a family. And Kat and I were talking about this before you got here, but, like, how, like, our friends are, you know, getting into relationships and that's who they depend on, and that's almost like their community, their source of, like, social, emotional, all types of support. And how that kind of, like, it doesn't necessarily isolate you. And I think that, like, at least my friends who are in relationships do a good job of, like, keeping friendships alive and all that. But, you know, you do lose that when other people are getting into these relationships. So it's really easy to fall into, like, oh, well, now I want that because there is no other option. That's what it seems like, right? We also, like, talked about how we live in like a very individualistic society of, you know, everyone's out on their own. We're not really a community-based country.
Yeah.
And also, like, or at least this is how it seems to me, where I observe other people getting into relationships, and obviously, like, you're very close with your partner. You depend on them for a lot of support emotionally, like physically or whatever. But like when you're single, like you have to depend on like the people around you, like so like friends, families, that if you're close to them. But it's like if you have that person, that constant support, then it's more likely that you're turning to them for a sense of support rather than your friends. And so it's like the priorities have shifted, and that makes the dynamics of a friendship different.
Yeah.
And I was talking about this with like one of my friends. Well, I posted on like one of my stories, like, what does friendship mean to you? And we got into like this conversation, like me and my friend got into this conversation. But I think one thing that I'm like kind of struggling with is the idea that like the relationships at least I have now, like friendships and like my peers and my mentors, like it's almost fleeting. It is good. All my relationships I would say are good. But it's also kind of like, it's only there for a brief period of time, and it's almost, I think I can see from the perspective of like having a partner, it's comforting to know that there will always be like a constant. And I think we've talked about this before, of just like someone who knows your whole story, kind of just always gets where you're coming from, and like knows the context of everything that you don't need to re-explain. And so like, one, I think it's great to be independent, at least like where I'm at now. Like I don't know where I'm going to be in 3 years. I don't even know where I'm going to be next year. And so it's like I have nothing really tying me down, or like, not that, you know, a partner would tie me down, but there's other people or other factors to consider. You know, there's always pros and cons to everything. And I think in the drastic measure, like in being independent, it's like absolutely wonderful. Like I have felt those moments where I'm like, I do love my life. I like that I can do whatever I want. I decide whatever I want to do. I know that whatever I'm doing is original. It's all authentic. There's no outside influence.
It's like what you want to do.
It's what you want to do.
Or what you think you want to do.
Yeah. Whatever you gaslight yourself into believing is important. But what comes with that is the concept that like it's very lonely sometimes. Despite no matter how many friends you have, there is no one who's like committed to you, or like, you know, you can tell your best friend everything, but it's just like it's not the same. So it's like a level of support that you can't really like get for yourself. And I think because of that, that's why I always think about relationships. It's just because it's like a very large thing that I've noticed other people have that I don't have, and I don't necessarily need it, but I just like think about it a lot in terms of like both individual future planning for myself, but also just like the societal like expectations of like someone to have like a nuclear family.
I agree with that, and I feel like I've probably mentioned this in a previous episode, but apparently I don't remember what I say in previous episodes. But for me, like how I think about it is like a sense of stability. Like if you have someone there that you know will be there, that's different from like having a group of friends where everyone has different priorities, different capacities. Obviously, like if you have good friends, then like they can support you, but like you can't expect them to be like always there for you all the time. But I guess like that's not necessarily true of a partner, but like I guess in a partnership there's that commitment of you are there for each other. But with friendships it's like, okay, we give each other support, but you have your own life, I have my own life. And me personally, I go through kind of phases where sometimes I'm like, oh, I would really like a partner, and other times I'm like, I really don't care. And I feel like right now I'm in the phase where I'm like, I don't care, but also I just like, I've been very busy, so I'm like,
Yeah, so Jam hangs out with you, you should be okay. High-key, low-key shade, okay?
No time.
I have no time. Don't waste my time, please. Yeah, so
I don't know, what's your take?
I think I've been thinking about this like concept of fracturing for like quite some time now, actually, because I'm done with grad school. Your girl is graduated and never again.
Done with school forever.
Forever.
Congratulations.
Thank you. But I think when I was in Baltimore, I was like, and actually even now that it's summer, I've been thinking about like how I've been so many people in the past couple of years that I'm like, what am I doing? Like, who am I? I feel like, okay, on this trip, people have been asking me like, oh, where are you from? And I legit am like, what do I say to that? Because
No, I've had that thought.
right, because okay, I've been in Baltimore for a year. When I was in Baltimore, I'd always say like, oh, I moved here from Michigan. And then now I'm like moved out of Baltimore, like my lease is up, I don't live there anymore, and I'm at I'm in Cincinnati for the summer, right? But am I really from Cincinnati? Like, who knows? I don't really claim Cincinnati, but but then like, yeah, I guess I'm moving to DC, but I haven't been there yet. So it's kind of like, what am I comprised of, you know? And like, people who I knew in Baltimore, like, knew who I was in Baltimore, but then I have friends who knew me before I lived in Baltimore, but didn't really get to like experience me in Baltimore. So it's like trying to communicate that to people who I am from, like you guys, right? You guys were not necessarily like directly part of me in Baltimore, but I'm like trying to like convey what happened to me while I was in Baltimore, you know? And so it's like, you have like all these individual pieces of yourself, or at least that's what I've been feeling. Sometimes I'm like, you know, it would be nice if I could just like collect all of this in another person that was not me. But yeah, that's my thought.
Yeah.
No, I feel that, because like when I think about the different places I've lived, this is going completely off tangent, but like, I think you did bring up a good point about just like how we're moving and how those places kind of like affected us, and you know, where we're kind of at life. Like, it is nice to be able to move around and stuff, because I think what place like affected me the most was probably when I was in college. Like, living there is basically who I am today. But most recently, like, I moved from DC, but I'm originally from California, and like Southern California, and that's like who I am at my base or my core. But like now I'm living in like Northern California. Like, it's just like a lot of different parts of my life that make up who I am. I personally don't think I would have been able to experience that had I not been independent. That's kind of how that ties in together.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit different for me since I've only lived in 2 places in my life. So it's a little bit easier for me to be like, okay, I'm from Michigan, because I mean, I grew up there, I went to college there. But then it's like, yeah, like when I go back to Michigan and people are like, oh, well, like, what are you doing? And then, like, Chicago is like a very big part of that, you know, because it's like my life in Michigan. It's like, yeah, it's like my base. But also I've experienced a lot since moving and learned a lot about myself and life that, like, when I go back, it's not like the same.
Yeah, I don't know why I think about relationships all the time. I'm literally like a girl on the move. I'm always like, okay, where are the men? But then it's like, in reality, if they were to come into my life, I'd be like, I gotta move.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, I wanted to shift the topic a little bit just to something more general.
Okay.
It's just like, how do we feel after completing 1 year of grad school? Whether you're finished, like Kat, or never finished, like Loho.
Or somewhere in the middle.
Or somewhere in the middle.
I want to die. Now that you've said that. Okay, I think this kind of relates to like something that we've been wanting to talk about, though, because Kat has related school or life to hiking.
Oh yeah.
And I think I agree. Like, I agree with her take, but I think I also had a different approach to it. Would you like to go first or second?
I can go. I
Go.
can go. Okay, so basically, I went on a hike 3 days ago with my friend, and we were talking about how when we were on the hike, like, life is like a hike, because I'm gonna just explain the vibes of what we were spitballing, and then after that we can expound and like debate whatever. Okay, so we were on this hike, and it was a pretty long hike. It was very uphill on the way up, and then it wasn't like a loop, so you just like basically went up and then you like walked back down, and it was great. Like, the views 10 out of 10 the entire time. But okay, we started and it was immediately like really steep. And I was like, wow, I hate this. Like, maybe we should just give up. So that's like life, right? Like, you start something new, and then immediately it's like, wow, this is so hard. Maybe I should just stop now. But then you keep going, and then it's like, okay, you kind of get used to it. Like, your heart rate's up, and you're like, okay, actually, maybe it's not like the worst thing in the world. Like, I can do it. And then there's also like pretty views along the way, so you're like, fine, whatever. And then in our hike in the middle, there was like this giant field of like wildflowers that was personally my favorite part. It was beautiful. I was like, these flowers are 10 out of 10. The colors, gorgeous, right? It was still like, that section with the wildflowers was still like really uphill, because it was like the field was like on a hill, on the hillside basically. So we were still like going straight up, but it was like, wow, I love these flowers and I love the vibes. And then we like kept going, and then we hit what was technically the end of the trail that we were on, but according to all trails, if you hike another half a mile to the left, you're gonna reach this like scenic overlook that has like benches and stuff that's definitely worth like the extra half a mile, you know, like 10 minutes of the hike. So we were like, okay, we'll keep going. And then it was like so hard. Like it was like straight up, and we were like, oh my god, are we ever gonna make it? Maybe we should just go back, like maybe this doesn't exist, even though like 5 people on all trails was like, definitely keep going, and like look at the benches. And then at one point we like stopped, and we're like, okay, there's people coming down, we should ask them where the benches are. And then they were like, oh, it's like literally right around that corner, because we were like about to give up. So I'm like, that's like life, right? You're like almost there, and you're like, oh, this is so hard, maybe we should just not, like who knows. But then we reached the top, and it was like super scenic, it was beautiful. And then you're like, oh wow, it was so worth it. And like that's like life, right? When you like hit your whatever, it's like obviously you celebrate, you're like overjoyed, it's a great time. And then we were walking down, and it was like smooth sailing. Oh, also the other thing, like at the top we could kind of see like the area where we started, and we were like, wow, we went so far. And I feel like there was like a couple of other places throughout the hike where we were like, wow, that's where we started, we've gone so far. Like when we hit the wildflowers, we were like, wow, we've gone so far. And then when we were at the top, we could see like where the wildflowers were, and we were like, wow, like we thought we were so far like then, but look at how far we are now. And then, yeah, we were, like, cruising back down, which is, like, you know, riding the high back down of, like, life and whatever you're chasing. And then that was when I realized, like, when we walked through the wildflowers again, I was like, okay, actually, the top was really great, but I think my favorite part was this field. This is the best part, which is, like, the journey is better than the destination. And then we, like, reached the bottom, and when we were going down that first section that was, like, actually so steep, I was like, actually, okay, I, like, feel validated now, because this first part actually was really hard, but I'm glad I didn't give up, and that's why life is like a hike.
Wow.
No, and it literally is. In different parts of your hike. I think it's so true. And also, I think a big takeaway from that is it always is better in retrospect, if that makes sense. Like, you're like, oh, I'm glad I did that. I'm glad I saw, like, the meadow was my favorite part, even though I didn't realize it then. There's a life lesson in there somewhere.
Also, it's better with friends.
Yeah. And sometimes you need other people to help you see the different perspective. There was one night, like a few weeks ago, where I had an exam the next day, and I was like so fed up with school. I was like frustrated about a lot of things, like no organization, the material, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, this is so dumb. Like, I don't want to study anymore. Like, I just want to just like lay in bed. I literally took like a 5-hour nap, and I was like still in bed when I called my parents. I was like, I just want to lay here for the rest of my life and not do anything. And then my dad was like, kind of like put things into more perspectives, because I was just like there, and I was like, at this point in time, I'm so tired. Like literally, there's nothing keeping me going on. And I'm just like, I'm so done. And then my dad was like, well, you remember when like this happened like a few years ago, and like you literally couldn't handle that? Like you've gone so far. You're at this point, even though you're frustrated with school, I know that you're like so much stronger than when you were like in high school or like another tough part of my life. And it's like, yeah, even though I was like struggling to find motivation to study for the exam, but also like it's just an exam. And I'm like, I'm here because like I want to be here and I want to learn all this stuff, which is like miles away from like when I was younger, when I was like, I literally don't want to do anything. And it was like helpful to hear that from someone else and be like, yeah, I have come all this way, but it was just hard to recognize in that moment.
And no, like right before the pandemic, and I have a picture of this, but like I wrote out, like I was like, okay, what do I do with my life? And I made like 3 different plans. And I was like, okay, this plan that I have is good. And I actually fulfilled it to the T of like what school I wanted to go to, where I wanted to live, all of that. And it was great. And then like next to it, I was like, okay, because I was a senior in college, and I think at that point I had realized I did a lot that I wasn't expecting, but like I had done a lot, like playing Frisbee, getting into leadership roles for different orgs, or like, you know, making friends, finding my major, like just a bunch of different things. And I was like, that was a huge thing that I've just accomplished. And then this plan that I had like set forward for myself, I was like, this is like an even bigger mountain that you're gonna need to climb. And like, yes, look back at the other mountains that you've conquered and achieved, and that will only propel you forward further. It is good to recognize that, because if you don't, it makes it a lot more difficult. I'm very like, if it's in front of me, that's all I can focus about.
Yeah.
And so it's really easy for me to like lose sight of, oh, I've actually done all these things. I have people who care and support me. I just very much agree with this whole hiking metaphor.
Yeah. I have something sentimental to say.
Oh my god.
No, this is just a moment where I realize the hike, the journey that I've come, where so during my gap year, I took this class. It was like kind of like a public speaking class.
Oh, yeah, I remember,
Yeah. And basically we had to write out goals of like what we wanted to achieve. I don't know what the time period was. Maybe it was like 5 years or whatever, or maybe like next year. And one of my goals was like, I want to find more meaning in life and actually want to live it. And 1 year later, I feel like I've achieved that.
Yay.
Yeah. But like at the time, I'm like, well, I'm just writing this just because that's something that I'm supposed to like aim for. But at the time, I was like, well, I feel like I'm pessimistic enough where like I don't think this is actually gonna happen. I'm just like writing this, but to see it like actually happen, like I'm like, oh, like I find a lot of meaning in life now, and I feel very fulfilled with a lot of the connections I have. It's like, wow, that things can actually change, you know.
This can go to our topic about optimism versus pessimism. But
Yeah.
I have like a similar, because I did a workshop for like this woman in leadership thing. And it was just like, imagine yourself like 10 years from now and just like write in either like the first or second person of like what that looks like. And I have not achieved that yet, but it's cool to see that like the trajectory that I'm on could lead to that. And I think it is kind of true that like the energy that you put out is the energy that you kind of like get back. And so like that's kind of cool. But we were talking about optimism versus pessimism. I forgot what we were talking about where that came up. I think one example though is, okay, so we were talking about meeting famous people. No, this is not optimism.
No. This is completely different. This is never meet your heroes.
Yeah.
That is not optimism
I
or
think
pessimism.
my optimistic view is like, my hero's gonna fall in love with me.
No. Okay, fine, whatever.
No. I forgot what we were talking about, but like, is it better to be optimistic versus pessimistic, or just like, because I think I'm more optimistic.
Wait,
right?
I thought you said are you an optimist?
Or are we both pessimists?
I have been told I'm a pessimist, but I maintain that I'm a realist.
And that's on gaslighting yourself.
I think I used to be a pessimist and now I'm an optimist. But then I feel like it's because I was saying this last night in the car. I feel like my brain is also smoothing over. And
No, but you have a year.
No, it's already happening. Because I'm like, I feel like this is another topic that I have on the list, but the quality of my thinking and the quality of my conversations nowadays versus back in the day is so much lower now. Like, I feel like I used to take pride in like, oh, I think deeply, I like introspect a lot, I have a lot of thoughts in my head, but now I feel like my head is just empty. I don't know if it's just because of like school or I'm just tired, but I feel like that's also part of the reason why I'm an optimist, because I don't think enough to be a pessimist.
Ignorance is bliss. But it's true. I think like school just drains so much out of you that it's like, if you don't think optimistically, like that's the only way they can go is good, or else if it doesn't, then you're screwed. So you kind of just need to be like, it's gonna work out. It has to.
Yeah.
There's no other option.
Wait, so you're an optimist?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I also think I'm a realist. My own reality.
Okay, if we're talking about school though, in terms of defense mechanism, I feel like both optimism and pessimism can be defense mechanisms.
Oh, for sure. I think if you're in grad school, you're always on defense mechanism mode. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, there's just nothing working with you. Not the school, not the material.
Although, okay, this is kind of related to what you guys were saying about like seeing how far you've come. I feel like those moments are actually really encouraging in grad school, because I had this instance where I think this was, I want to say like in April, maybe May, where I did kind of like a working meeting with an old coworker where she like wanted some of my thoughts on this like analysis that she was working on. And I remember we would have these calls back when I was like actually working at the lab to talk about stuff, and I was always just like, I don't know, like maybe you should ask the PI or whatever. And then I was talking to her during this call, and I realized I actually have concrete thoughts and like suggestions for her that I think have come because I've been, you know, exposed to all this like public health research in the past year. And I was like, yeah, like for my capstone project, like I've been thinking about something very similar, and like here's things that we've tried, and like here's things that you could try, and like here's like a really simple way you could redo this analysis to like look at something. And like after I got off the call, I was like, I could not have done that a year ago. There's no way. So I don't know, maybe school is good. At the very least, I think for me, it helped me like build the vocabulary that I needed to like do some of the work that I want to do. So maybe there is value in being optimistic about school, I guess. Because like even if you don't feel like you're learning much while you're doing it, I think afterwards there's a lot of things to reflect over.
I agree. That's literally what our faculty tells us all the time, where I think a big part of being a first-year PT student is that you've never been to the clinic or you've never treated in a clinic, and you're learning all of this information that you don't really know how to apply. So half of the time it just feels like you're studying, but you're not actually learning. And then the faculty is always like, oh, you've learned so much and you just don't even know it. And then like the rest of us are just like frustrated, and we're just like, it's the week before the finals and we have no idea what we're doing. And it's like, it's just, we have absolutely no idea. And then I feel like I'm still kind of in that mindset right now because I still haven't gone to the clinic yet, and I'm about to go on clinicals for 6 weeks. And I mean, I'll keep y'all updated if I actually feel like I learned something. But so far it feels like my mind's still empty. But that's what faculty has been telling me, so I hope that's true.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many like healthcare professionals out there who have gone through the same path that we have, and they're very competent now. So like, it works. You just gotta quote unquote trust the process. And I'm sure too, like with the material that I think we all learn is just so hard to digest that it's just like you can only take it a bite at a time, and it's like only at the end that you realize that you're like full, if that makes sense. Like you're like, okay, I'm gonna keep going, but like I don't think this is gonna be filling at all. And then at the end you're like, oh, it's like you know, it has made a big impact. But I feel all of that of what you just said. I know you do this too, but we do practice clinicals, or it's not like with the actual patient. But it is kind of cool to be like, oh, you have this symptom. You probably have this. I did learn something. Or like if I see like a drug commercial and I'm like, I know what that's for. I know how that works. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I did not know that a year ago. So, you know, it does add up, and it's more than just a test question. Like, it's kind of crazy if you think about it, that I could give you something and that would make you feel better. That would make something go away, which is like insane.
Yeah. Wow, I guess the theme of this episode is just we've come a long way with less folds.
Bro, listen. We started this podcast at the beginning of the pandemic 3 years ago.
I know.
Yeah, 3 years ago. Oh my god. We've known each other for so long, guys.
No, Kat was literally...
Okay, guys. I went to League with Loho yesterday when we were waiting to pick up Jam. And Loho's not changed. In the 7 years that I've known her, she's the same. She has the same iconic Frisbee outfit. Her pre-wrap still falls off her head.
Nothing fits my head. I don't know what to do about it.
I laughed so hard. It was, yeah. Something's never changed, guys. Loho is proof of that.
I have another you've come a long way story related back to the podcast. I was talking to a teammate at Pod, and I don't know how we got to this conversation, but we were somehow talking about it was about like whether or not you're a giver or a taker in a conversation.
Okay.
So I said like I was more of a giver in a conversation, as in a lot of times I like to take this back seat and then just ask questions, listen, let the other person talk. But the reason for that was in the past that was propelled by a lot of social anxiety, where I was like, I don't want to talk, so I'm going to make the other person talk so that this conversation is not awkward. But I was telling my teammate, nowadays I notice that I'm talking more about my own thoughts, and part of that is because obviously like the growth that I've had in the past few years, but also because of this podcast where we've created space for each other to talk about our own thoughts And when we're editing, we listen to ourselves and it's very cringy. And then it's like, okay, how do I stop being cringy? And so, yeah.
You can probably post this raw. Don't edit it.
Yeah.
You say that every episode. They're like, just post it.
Yeah. But yeah, that was another moment of like, wow, how far I've come since we've made this podcast and how my social skills have changed.
Okay, if you're a teammate of Jam's currently, I hear she's a social butterfly. There is no way that Jam would have asked an entire team if they were sun cat, moon cat,
That's true.
sun dog, moon dog, in the middle of a serious team meeting. Having been in a leadership role and knowing Jam both as like a friend and as a player and a teammate, she would have not done that 3 years ago.
Okay, but the vibes were right.
Even if the vibes were right,
that's all
Jam
I'm
was
saying.
I'm trying to remember our 1 year B-fly. Yeah, there's no way.
No, not at all.
Oh my gosh, I remember when we first met, or like, wait, did we ever say this on the podcast? We met on the B team.
I think so.
A Frisbee team.
I feel like we did.
Okay, well, I specifically remember the three of us sitting at a dinner table.
Yeah, the onion rings.
During a tournament, and that was like our first time actually hanging out, like the three of us, and how things have changed.
I don't remember, I'm gonna be honest, until I saw the onion ring picture.
I remember the onion rings. And I remember I don't remember what we talked about, though. But I do remember we had a table.
I also don't remember what we talked about.
I don't even remember the
we
tournament.
talked about sectionals. Because that was sectionals and we were trying to make it to regionals.
Oh my gosh, I was literally telling Kat this yesterday. I was like, my dream, being on the B team and then moving up to the A team. And it still is. Like, I have been on the A team. I have, like, led the A team. I hope that the B team beats the A team one day. And makes it to nationals. Because I remember being like, to our coach, what are the odds that we backdoor bracket and we make it to the end and we play against our A team and then we win? He was like, no chance. And I was like, okay, fine.
No, I remember we were discussing, we were like, okay, we gotta beat this team, and then when like we make it to the next round and we gotta beat this team.
There's no chance, but it's a nice dream to have.
I support it.
Yeah.
I support the dream.
I'm always for an underdog. Like,
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
But yeah, thanks for joining. TLDRs, or I mean,
Anything
I think
else?
we have a lot.
I think we covered a lot.
I think this weekend though could be a whole season.
Okay, now that we can just record on the fly like this.
Okay, so this is episode 1 of season 5.
If it's not, we'll just cut this whole part.
Season 1 of the what is this?
Thoughts in NorCal.
Thoughts in NorCal. Thoughts in the Bay.
Wait, what if this is like no more thoughts? Like
Oh, the last hold.
No,
final folds. I mean, whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
And
We
you
don't have a
know,
plan.
when we're 50, we can still record. Like, everyone shut up. You know what I mean? Like, just let us do our thing. TLDR. I don't want my brain to smooth over, and I don't like menopause. Oh, wait. You described this as a second puberty. I don't want to go through second puberty.
Is menopause basically second puberty?
I think so, honestly. I think that's what they should call it.
TLDR, life is like a hike.
No!
Sorry, was that yours?
No. Take it.
Okay.
TLDR, I have no thoughts.
As always.
As always.
That can't be your default. What happened to growth?
I feel like it's growth that I don't have any thoughts. Like, I've learned to just write it out.
Good.
It's a skill that we envy. All right. Bye, Jane.
Bye,
Bye, Jane.
And if you're a true fan, you know who Jane is.